Hello, I'm Arnell Adcock, and it's my privilege to be with you today. I wanted to begin by thanking you for how you have taken care of members of my family. There are at least two representatives in your association who have helped our family. One's my father in Fayette and my mother-in-law in Montgomery. And I'm grateful for how you have given them a quality of life, and you have given us a quality of life as they come to the end of their days. And we're grateful for all the ways that organizations like yours help families like ours. Today I'm here to talk about making a world of difference in a world of change, because we're not going to be going back to how things were. In fact, we don't really know how life will be in the coming year. We've had so many changes this year that have been dispiriting and discouraging and even depressing. But we've adjusted. We have worked from home with our children. We became teachers. We quarantined and kept in touch virtually. We worshiped in isolation. Takeout definitely had a new meaning. Birthdays were smaller and with social distancing. We visited loved ones without being with them. Stress relief took on a new meaning. Drive-through weddings were a choice of some, and of course funerals were lonely. Masks and gloves became essential accessories. Life routines have changed during COVID, and these pictures don't even depict the tragic weather events and the political unrest that we're experiencing. So today, I would like for us to identify some of the changes that are occurring in your business and in your organizational structures. And then let's look at how you as a leader can make a difference in this uncertain time, because who you are and how you lead matter. You're leading in a business that faces significant challenges, and these were some of the top pain points that I have been able to identify. And if we were doing this in a collaborative setting, I'm sure you could add others. And in fact, I hope you will write them down as you think of them, because they're issues that you want to deal with. But you know that you're adapting to reimbursement changes. That's changing all the time. When you're dealing with government reimbursement. You're developing provider networks and partnerships. And I think that during this time of change, you're looking at new ways to have your networks and partnerships helping you in your business. You're beginning to understand cost and your return on investment in emerging technologies, because as our interaction today represents, we're changing, using technology in different and more ways to help us in our business transactions. You're adapting to competing marketing strategies. I'm sure that there are new businesses coming into your market and others leaving. So you having an eye on what the marketing situation is and what your strategy is and how you fit into the market. And then, of course, attracting and retaining staff is huge for having your business function well. But then you have COVID on top of the changing business environment, having to close your facilities to the outside world. And I'm sure it's just as challenging in these days as you're figuring ways to reopen to families and visitors. And in that environment, helping frustrated, angry families and trying to help them understand the importance of your protocols. Then social distancing, finding a way for social interaction for your residents when you're needing to quarantine. And then, of course, all the PPE requirements that are important for keeping everybody safe, including the mask and the garments, and having the very strict hygiene and deep cleaning measures that come with COVID. And then, of course, you have the next layer, which I just entitled, I didn't sign up for this, because all of the consequences and unintended consequences and direct consequences that come with COVID and the business decisions and social decisions that you're needing to make to keep everybody safe and to keep your business functioning. So we have the personal effects that each of us is experiencing in a different way, but the weariness that comes with it, additional psychological and physical and emotional work, the isolation, the depression that comes with the isolation, dealing with the unknown and not knowing what the next month will be like, what the next phase of COVID will be like, what the new response will be. The sense of loss that we have because our lives have changed and everything is different in our worlds. And then dealing with change that we don't understand or even know what it may be. So I'm sure you've heard the phrase, I didn't sign up for this, more than once. Well, how are we going to react and what is it that we're going to do? I want to introduce the idea and go back to the word crisis. And I'm sure that you've heard that the two figures in the word crisis, and we have two different variations of Chinese in the circle, but you can see in each word there are two figures. The first figure represents danger. Now, in the past, I've always heard that the second picture represented opportunity. And it's interesting, one of the background of that seems to have come from a speech that JFK gave in 1964. And the rest of us who do public speaking have just used that interpretation that was in his speech. But it seems that this second character more clearly means change point. And so we have two concepts in this one depiction of the Chinese word crisis. We have danger and precarious, dangerous and precarious, and then we have change point. And they're central to our thinking today about current circumstances. So that's the reason I wanted to bring this up, to give us some kind of structure to have our discussion. Step back and let's look at what your crises are. What are the dangers that you're facing? And we can go back to the slide that was depicting your changing environment and assisted living care, what those are, what your pain points are, because some of those are dangerous. It depends on how you're going to prepare to react to those, whether or not they become change points. Now, it seems to me that we look at each of these slides that we looked at a few minutes ago, because I want to ask you to look at each list and what would you add to it? Because I know that you have additional items that you are dealing with that bring you pain and you consider danger that we can address to make them a change point. So the pain points, and then of course the COVID challenges that you have on an individual basis. I'm sure that there are other challenges that you have as well. What would you add that you're seeing in your own staff and within your own community? That brings us then to, okay, but what can we do about it? And I think it gives us the transition point to think about how we can turn the things that seem upsetting, out of the normal, that seem to be dangers to us, that are bringing issues that we can't see solutions to, or we We have solutions imposed on some outside group that we might not necessarily agree with. How are we going to deal with those? So what I want to do in this section is to look at the structural, the organizational status of your company. So how will we turn crises into change points? Well, in our organizational discussion, we're going to look at what is called the SWOT. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you can identify during this time of change? And then the other, at the end, the second half of our discussion will be the relational challenges: communication, empathy, resilience. How do you build a stronger organization once you've gone through this? Well, a SWOT analysis, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, identifies and gives you a structure by which you can analyze what are the strengths that are in your organization. What can you identify that have been real strengths during this time of crisis and change? What are the weaknesses? What is it that has not worked as well now that we're in a different set of circumstances in the operation of the business? And what are your external opportunities? Maybe we mentioned marketing a few minutes ago. You may feel that there is a weakness in marketing, or you may feel some type of external threat because companies are moving in, but it may also give you an opportunity. That threat may not just be a danger, it may present an opportunity to you in looking at where your place is in the business structure of the community, how you present yourself, what you do well, and how you're going to build on that. And then, of course, the T is the threats. What are the threats? And, of course, we can go back to looking what funding is like. I think that would probably be one, and what government regulation is going to become. So this gives you a framework that you can use to do an analysis with your team. You can do it for yourself as the leader, with your administrative team. Eventually, you would want to do something like this with your entire team, because it will help give an insight into how they're viewing what this period of time is like for them, and what it represents in terms of their own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So this is called a SWOT analysis. And I would say probably you have not stayed up worried about doing a SWOT analysis. However, what the SWOT analysis does for you is it helps you to organize what those ideas are, what those worries are that do keep you up at night. And that's always where I recommend that leaders start, is what's on your mind, what's worrying you, how do we identify it, and where do we put it, and what kind of strategy do we build to address it. But on the other side, it gives you an opportunity to recognize what is going well, what your real strengths are in the company, and to be able to celebrate those and to build on them. So what I've included in your packet are just worksheets. Duplicate them or build others, but use the format that we had in our example. Ask those questions, and then use your worksheets to begin brainstorming and analyzing what is present in your company. So how do you and your staff see your organizational strengths? How do you see your challenges? How do you see your opportunities? We've looked at organizational structure and how that affects your business outcomes and how you look at what your current crises are and how you can use that analysis to move to change points and improvement and build a stronger, resilient organization. Second, in terms of making a difference and being effective and having a resilient organization comes to leadership, not just who you are as the lead person in your organization, but who all your people are. Everyone in the organization needs to be developing leadership skills and effective communication skills and effective relationship skills. That's what helps you build an resilient and strong organization. What we want to look at as we begin looking at leadership is communication. The authentic message, the complete message that is made up of three parts. The nonverbal cues, what we're not saying, and then the words, the actual words we're saying, and then the tone of voice that we use. So let's look at these components for a minute. What if you're using words that are, when you're saying, well, good morning, does that represent a good morning, or does that represent an attitude that means I wish I weren't here? Or what if words aren't present at all? What if we're just looking at nonverbal cues and we're wanting to say we're glad that we're there, but if our nonverbal cues represent attitudes that say we're not happy that we are here, then you begin to see what makes the next message. And I think that having some type of analysis of getting outside of ourselves and listening to ourselves and watching ourselves so that we can say, what are you saying when you aren't saying a word? What is it that your staff interprets from your nonverbal cues? What is it that your staff interprets if your tone doesn't match your words? Or what if your words don't match your nonverbal cues? This is not something that is strange. This is something that we deal with in our relationships all of the time. So the idea of an authentic message, an authentic person, what is authenticity? It's something that is genuine. It's something that has value. We want authentic items. Authentic leaders are the leaders who are effective, and being true, being real is important, regardless if the message is a sad one or if the message is a glad one. There are the cues and the words and the tone that represent those two opposite emotions and activities. So giving thought to the messages that you're delivering, even the ones when you're not saying a word, becomes important to your being believable and respected. One of the things that I've learned in observing organizations is compliance. And you know this from having to deal with government regulations. Compliance is not a high regard, respected, voluntary activity. We comply. If we're complying, we're doing something because we have to. On the other hand, so I'm asking you, does your staff just comply, Or do they willingly participate in what outcome you want? In essence, do they respect your leadership to the point that they would not want to do something that disappoints you? And that's what we're looking for in leadership, when we can understand that our relationship with the people that we work with needs to be true, authentic, real, so that messages are understood, they are clear, and relationships can be built. Clear, and relationships can be built.
Take another deep breath. Take a deep breath. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, look at mommy. Look at mama.
My head.
I know you smashed your fingers in the door, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, take a deep breath. Okay, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, look at mommy. Say, I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Say, I'm strong.
I'm strong.
Say, I'm beautiful.
I'm faithful.
Say, I'm loved.
I love.
Say, I'm worthy.
I'm ready.
You're beautiful.
Thank you, Mom.
You're welcome, baby. I love you.
I love you, Mom.
Is that not just the most precious little girl? But this video has been important to me, and thinking about empathy. And empathy is being able to put ourselves in others' position so that we have an idea of what they're feeling. Now, it doesn't mean that we give them an excuse. It's not sympathy, but it's recognizing that a pain exists, and then how do we as leaders react to that? And I think this video can teach us something about empathy. First, the mother could have said, "Oh, you're okay, no need to cry," and just dismiss the little girl. It's like, it doesn't matter. Yes, you hurt your hand in the door, but it doesn't matter. Keep going. Or she could have run to her, picked her up, treated her as though she had this major injury, and in essence, helping the little girl become dependent or invalid-like for her whole life. Everything is a big deal and is disabling or enabling. So the third behavior was the one that we saw the mother use. She inquired about the little girl's injury. She verified that it was an injury, but she made sure that she was okay. But then she assured the little girl of her abilities and qualities to go on and to overcome. And I love that the way that she assures her of her traits and of her abilities, and making her a resilient, independent person. This, to me, gave me a leadership lesson in knowing how to react and lead others when they were facing some type of setback. So what are we talking about when we use the word empathy? Because it's used to describe a wide range of experiences, but researchers generally define empathy with two components. One would be our ability to sense what other people's emotions are, but it needs to be coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. It's that part of empathy that becomes so important. We can recognize the emotion, and sometimes we do not even react to it, we just go on. But empathy means we have some ability to imagine what they're thinking or feeling. Now, sometimes as leaders, we're reluctant to admit or reveal our emotional reactions because some think that it might make them look weak or ineffective, but that's not what research shows. Emotions are an important part of motivating and guiding behavior, and they serve as signals to those around us. It's our emotions and the emotions of others that make us help us make better decisions and to be more effective. So I know you've heard the saying, and the older I get, the more I understand the importance of the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. An important part of leadership is caring. It's having the ability to care about what somebody else is thinking or feeling. And if you've experienced this type of sincerity, you know the power that it has. And that brings us to the second arrow, which is the thought that thoughtfulness earns trust and loyalty. If we can monitor the climate around us so that we have an idea what the feeling and tone of the group happens to be, that's an important tool for a leader to understand how to bridge to the emotional climate of a group. So is it relaxed? Is it tense? Is it positive? Is it disgruntled? And you can understand that if you read, and we've heard this thought, if you read the audience wrong, if you read the group wrong, if you read the person wrong, then that's an equation for disaster in terms of relationships. So learning, not only being able then to monitor an emotional climate, but being able to express our feelings to help motivate others, and then considering how our behavior influences others and being able to put ourselves in others' shoes. And then really, really important is if we're able to do those things, then do we have the ability to reframe how we are thinking about a situation so that we get outside of ourselves and just how we are seeing things, how I am seeing things, to be able to see how others are seeing a situation or a danger or a celebration, what it means to them. One thing that I want to say at this point, however, is you can't fake this, because when people can see or feel that something is not genuine, that it's fake, you're just pretending, they feel manipulated. So they're not, it's not going to be what you're trying to do in building empathy is not going to work because it is not authentic. So if emotions are things that you are, feelings that you have a difficult time processing, as a leader, this is an important part of your growth and development, that you can understand what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what others are feeling, so that you can bridge to that and, in essence, help them move on to a solution or resolution, or just acknowledge what situation they're in, rather than losing an employee, a friend, or a family member. So we come back once again to being authentic. It's the key, just being yourself. Communication, authenticity, and empathy are the building blocks for resiliency. And this is our last idea today in this workshop. It's resiliency that will help us determine whether the organization, your staff, will be able to weather the COVID crisis. And as you can see from this slide, resiliency is organizational as well as individual. The top two definitions is what we're looking at here. Your organizational resilience is the ability of a system to withstand changes in its environment and still function. So being able to react or endure and continue to carry on and function. Psychological resilience is individual, and it's the ability to adapt in the face of adverse conditions. If I were just guessing, I would assume that you have more than one person in your organization that's having a difficult time adapting to COVID and the conditions of change that are occurring all around us. And one of our, what I guess I want to challenge you as a leader with is the importance of knowing about resilience and understanding that you can help build resilience as a leader. So that's what we want to look at today. This is an interesting point about resilience that I learned recently in an article in the Harvard Business Review. As we defined resilience a minute ago, it's the ability to recover from setbacks, the ability to adapt well to change, and the ability to keep going in the face of adversity. Well, I'm imagining that you're understanding resilience to be a high level organizational and individual ability. Well, I want to challenge you with this. Sarah Bond and Jillian Shapiro asked 835 employees from public, private, and nonprofit firms in Britain what was happening in their own lives and what was it about that required them to draw on their reserves. And here is the chart that shows you this, because we would be thinking, okay, something like COVID or something like a bombing within London or some major event like that causes us to draw on our emotional reserves more than any other kind of event. And what this study determined and discovered for us was none of those huge events, even COVID, they did not point to any of those as something that caused them to use their emotional reserves. It was their coworkers. So 75% of them said that the biggest drain on their resilience reserves was managing difficult people or office politics at work. And that was followed closely by stress brought on by overwork and by having to withstand personal criticism. I think about this section of our workshop focusing on what I would call the silly putty part of our discussion. Resilience is more than just a bouncing ball. A ball just goes up and down or down and back or maybe down and forward. But it's the pliability that makes resilience so important. It's the ability to conform to a shape that you want to make or adjust to the task that you want to perform. So a resilient person has the pliability of silly putty, an ability to adapt to the challenges and stresses of a situation. Now, this discussion helps us to look at 4 steps, 4 ideas that are crucial to being resilient when things are tough. Resiliency is not necessary when things are going well. Resilience is important when things are not going well, however that may seem to be. So how do we become resilient? Well, it's important to recognize that we're not born with resilience. It's behaviors and thought and actions that we have to learn and develop. And surviving change and learning to grow and to thrive in it. I think we resist change and we don't see it as the reason why. We need to look at change and see how we can adapt so that we not just survive, but we can learn to thrive in adversity. And resilience is a capacity to cope with stress and adversity. And those two things are not the same thing. We have adverse circumstances, but stress would be our emotional and physical and mental reaction to that. So how can we handle ourselves so that we can face adversity and remain in control of ourselves? So this is the third slide here that helps us see that resilience comes from believing in ourselves and at the same time believing in something that's bigger than ourselves. And I understand that this is a challenge, but I still go back to the slide of the mother. She was building within the little girl a belief that she can be okay, that she can survive, she can take care of a situation, even at that young age when she's not even able to say all the words that her mother is teaching her to believe in herself. And then being able to believe in something bigger than ourselves. And here's where I just want to introduce a thought to you that to me is important, and it's not necessarily, it's not religious, but it is spiritual in the sense that it is attached to our spirits. And that's the concept of faith and hope. Having faith in something means that we can't see it, but we believe it's there. And we can have faith in an outcome that would occur. So that faith is an attribute of my individual spirit, of your individual spirit. And then of course, hope is described as an anchor that we have. And I've seen hope played out in my families, and this is sad, but it's true, and I think that it's a clear picture of what we're talking about with hope. One of my uncles had cancer and had it for years, and he would travel from a town in East Tennessee to Nashville for treatment. And he would make those trips regularly to receive the treatment that he needed to fight cancer. But as is a situation too often, eventually cancer wins. So on what became the last trip to Nashville was the doctor saying to him, I can't do anything else for your condition. What was remarkable in his hearing those words is he hardly lived long enough to get back to his hometown before he passed. to me, that is a personal illustration of how strong hope is, because he had fought and he had lived and he had survived through so much with the cancer battle. But hearing the words, "There is nothing else I can do for you," hope was gone. Now, that's a life and death description, but I do want you to think about the idea of faith and hope within your organizations. People want to have something to believe in. They want to be able to believe in themselves. They want to believe that your organization is doing something larger than all of you, as you take care of your residents and the care that you give them, and really the love that you give them, and the courage that you give them. All of that is bigger than any one person. And having that ingredient of faith within your organization seems to me to be principal to the strength that your organization has and the resiliency of your residents as well as your staff. And then the hope that everyone has in coming every day to work there, that the idea of hopefulness and the contributions that everybody is making is one of hope. So I really want you to challenge you to think about this concept of resilience, a person believing in himself or herself and believing in something bigger than himself or herself. And your organization, your business, your residences seem to me to offer people the idea of believing in something that is bigger than themselves. Here are 10 ideas to consider when developing resilience. Number one is, don't try to solve problems with the same thinking that created them. Now, this is what we were talking about a few minutes ago as a trait in leadership of reframing a situation, or reframing a problem, and being able to give up a presupposed idea. And I know that you can't tell this, but this is my first distance workshop, and I said that with knowing, of course you can tell. When we're talking about tone of voice today, I mean, how much can you tell the anxiety just in my tone of voice and trying to do a workshop in a way that I've never done a workshop before. So it was not until I began to try and think of this presentation, how I would do it the same way that I would do it in person, that I began to have the courage and the idea and the wherewithal to put this together. So being able to think about problems in a different way from how we create them is a very important skill. And that ties to number two, in mastering our emotions before they manage you. I could see within myself the anxiety that I had, and it was hard for me to overcome my anxiety enough to be able to overcome the situation of doing a Zoom workshop, because I always have presented in person. So I'm just using those two because you can see it, and you, even though you cannot see me, you've gotten the nonverbal cues today that allow you to know this is my first distance workshop. But number three is staying tough, not giving up, to keep on growing, to be preparing ourselves. And And resilience involves growth. It's learning new skills and looking ahead and having trying to understand the circumstances that we're in so that we are prepared. But we know that we're not going to succeed every time. So number 6 points out to us as many times as it takes to pick ourselves up and to keep trying to make progress. And number 7 is recognizing that small wins matter. Number 8 and number 9 are crucial because they come back to relationships. And 1 through 7 are really individual attitudes and skills and mental growth. But when you look at 8 and 9, those focus on our relationships and how relationships help us to have resilience, because how people around us talk, and that goes back a few minutes ago to the London illustration. But our relationships can help give us the wherewithal to keep on going, to be able to be resilient in the face of adversity. But isn't number 8 interesting? Is to keep on giving. And doing the study for this workshop and for another course that I took last month, the idea and the study on the benefits that occur to an individual when that person is a giving individual. Giving helps us to have a better emotional health. Giving reaps reward that is beyond the act of giving something to somebody else. Yes, it benefits the person who received that, or at least we hope that it did. But it is what happens to us when we're involved in giving that helps to create resilience and strength within ourselves. And number 10 is challenging to me because I don't think that I am accustomed to creating my own meaning. I think that I have grown up and experienced family and education and businesses where I interpreted my meaning from what was happening with the people that I was surrounded with. I was allowing them to create my meaning. And in one huge project that I was involved in, I came back to my desk one day and there was a Post-it note on my desk that one of my colleagues had left this message. Things are only as important as you make them to be. Now, the purpose of that note was not to say that we were involved in unimportant things, but that my colleague was trying to point out to me that I was making things much more stressful than they needed to be because of how I was reacting to it. So rather than working within myself and giving meaning to what I was involved in, I was allowing the external pressure to add to, in an unnecessary way, the process that I was involved in. So as an older person, I can appreciate number 10 and focusing on what is the meaning of this for me, my goals, and my future. So number 10, I think, can have a great number of blessings for us. We cannot see 2021, but we can believe in ourselves and in our teams, and we can believe that together we can do whatever it takes to succeed. Our universe is developed with balance, and it's during crisis that balance is gone, which is why resilience is necessary until the world or our lives right themselves. Just look at this overview for a minute, and you can come back to it later and look at yourself and use this as a tool for reflection. Let's look at physical. The physical flexibility, the endurance, and the strength help us to do whatever it is that we need to do. If we somehow do not take care of our bodies, we're not able to endure. We don't have the strength, we don't have the flexibility to be able to do our work in a suitable way. Then there's our mental abilities, being able to pay attention, having mental flexibility and an optimistic worldview, being able to incorporate multiple points of view. We've talked about framing more than once today. Then our emotional range and flexibility, having positive feelings about ourselves and about others, being able to regulate ourselves so that we can adhere to some type of routine or schedule or ability to keep within ourselves. And then the ability to build relationships and be able to relate to others. And of course, this brings us back to where we were with our empathy. Our spiritual core comes to our values, and as well as our flexibility and tolerance of what other people believe and what their values are, and having the wherewithal to be able to work with different values within the workplace, so that we're focused on what the core value for the organization is. And then our ability to be intuitive, to be able to feel and have an emotion, but especially being able to recognize a feeling that we have of what's going on around us. So we come back to the importance of resiliency. In this world of change, what I assume won't change will be the fact that your business will remain taking care of people and hiring the right people who create the team to take care of your residents. What won't change is that humans eat, sleep, talk, use the bathroom, need showers, have laundry, are cheerful, sad, angry, demanding, get sick. They need assistance, physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. And technology can only help so much. People assist people. You are in the assisting people business, and that won't change. And you need a resilient, empathetic team to succeed. In some ancient tribal cultures, the warrior leader of the tribe is said to have strived to walk as if every step were a prayer. These prayers might have been words, or they may have represented a posture of humility and gratitude. As warrior leaders, may you have walking prayers that help you make a difference in this changing world.